we're really very fortunate today to have three friends, three world-class visionary individuals in the field of ophthalmology. We have Rick Lewis, who's the current president of ASCRS, one of the top glaucoma specialists in the country. We have Mark Rosenberg, who is a visionary practice manager who runs the Barnett Delaney practice, which is just an extraordinary practice in Arizona. And we have Kerry Solomon, who's the president of ASCRS next year and is certainly one of the top cataract surgeons in the world as well. So having seen these presentations, I'd like to ask a few questions. We'll start maybe with you, Rick. And I mentioned that in my view, there's been a change in the approach from glaucoma specialists, who are generally very conservative, except for you, about their approach to MIGS. What is the feeling in the glaucoma community about the role of MIGS?
The world has really changed. It's been a process, and Glaukos deserves a lot of the credit for an incredible launch of a device that has really captured the imagination of the cataract and the glaucoma world. They did all the heavy lifting in terms of designing well-controlled trials. They did the heavy lifting in getting reimbursement, and they did the remarkable heavy lifting of training everybody. And all that is what has created an atmosphere currently where the new devices will be accepted. I think we're looking forward to greater efficacy and this remarkable safety that the MIGS procedures provide. So, whereas if you had brought this topic up 10 years ago, there would have been a lot of resistance and a lot of people would have said no. And nowadays, I think most ophthalmologists across the world are on board.
So, Rick, you're the glaucoma specialist is the gatekeeper for glaucoma procedures, but the market is with cataract surgeons. That's the large market for people who are going to be having surgery and who are taking care of glaucoma. Kerry, what's your view of the cataract surgeon's view of MIGS today, and what is the opportunity for the future?
You know, it's interesting because we had a discussion years ago, Eric, you and I and Rick, and the glaucoma specialists were very much focused on efficacy. And the cataract surgeons, and Eric, I'd put you right in the mix of that too. We were very much in the camp of we want it to be simple, routine, and safe, and we want it to be effective, but it didn't need to be as effective as a trabeculectomy. MIGS has been huge. I think it's a paradigm shift of where patients are going to be treated for currently mild to moderate glaucoma. These patients reside with comprehensive ophthalmologists, cataract surgeons, and most people are embracing the opportunity to offer a surgical alternative to drops and lasers currently at the time of cataract surgery, but as has been presented, when we can do this in ocular hypertensives and pseudophakics, I think it's going to explode. The future looks bright. It's really exciting to see some of the other MIGS products coming along. I think the opportunities are expanding, and the majority of early intervention with glaucoma, I see shifting to the comprehensive ophthalmologist.
So we've heard now about safety, we've heard about efficacy, but the triad that's going to really allow this to grow is there has to be economic justification for it as well. And maybe, Mark, you could tell us about the economics. I showed some slides, but I didn't really go into them. What does a MIG procedure mean to the bottom line for a practice like Barnett Delaney?
Thanks, Eric. Over the last 20 years, I've been pretty aggressively involved in integration of new technologies, and the first thing I'll tell you about MIGS is I think that this was the easiest new technology integration that we've been able to bring into the practice, and it certainly was a pleasure to see the low capital expenditure that was required. I sit in a lot of these meetings, and I always kind of look at going from the podium to the street, and what's said on the podium, does it really ring true in the practice? And in this technology platform, I've found that it very much rings true. We did a retrospective study of our own patient database through AHR, and the numbers hold that 30%, a solid 30% of all the cataract patients over the last 3-year period that we studied, 30% have glaucoma and would be qualified candidates for this procedure. Last year, we did approximately 500 MIG procedures. Generally, we're right at about 100 procedures a month, which is just less than 10%. And the financial numbers that you showed, all in between the professional side, the facility side, less the the component for the device itself, we're still looking about an incremental of about $700 procedure in net margin to the practice. So
That's
the
between
efficacy is there.
between the surgical fee and the facility fees, and it's a delta of about $700 extra for a procedure that takes about 5 minutes.
That's correct, yeah.
Right. It's a good return on investment.
What we're missing, though, is what it means for the patient. You know, if you look at most of the data, 60 to 80% of patients on one medicine, at least a year out, are off their medicines. Docs don't have to deal with hypotony. You're not dealing with a lot of the morbidity associated with traditional glaucoma surgery, which is why this is very well accepted by cataract surgeons. And from a patient's perspective, not having to deal with drops, compliance, dollars to purchase drops, et cetera, it's been a huge benefit.
I fully agree with you, Kerry. I want to go back to Mark for 1 second, get a follow-up, and I'll come to you, Rick. In that we just heard about drops and compliance and costs, and I fully believe that drug delivery and MIGS are going to be the future of glaucoma, not eye drops. Healthcare is changing in a very dramatic way. What is the role of MIGS going to be with accountable care organizations moving forward?
That's a great question because I think it's going to be a critical tool. We hear a lot of buzzwords like population health management and fee for value versus fees for service. And over a pretty short period of time, doctors are going to be reimbursed and be held accountable for outcomes of their patients and managing the population of patients that they're caring for. So it's pretty simple. If you are financially responsible for managing the pressures in a glaucoma patient, needless to say, we want to take as many variables out of that, and the non-compliance of patients and the expense of pharmaceuticals and the difficulty in administering it is one of the largest variables. So I think this is going to be one of the most successful tools for doctors managing population health management and being able to demonstrate the results of that. So I think it's going to be important to reimbursement.
Rick?
I think all these are really valid points, and certainly healthcare systems such as Kaiser Permanente, which is probably the biggest one in the country, is looking closely at using MIGS to reduce their cost of delivering care. But we have to realize, particularly for this audience, that about 50% of our patients don't have elevated pressure and still have glaucoma. So medications for glaucoma, drug delivery systems, and alternative ways of treating the eye, whether it's neuroprotection, are still a valid and important role that's going to be played. Nonetheless, I think that for the high-pressure glaucoma, I think the MIGS procedures and what's going to come forward are going to change the paradigm.
Eric, let me make a comment on a lot of the discussion has been this, the MIGS are really applicable to cataract surgeons, and we're now going to cataract refractive glaucoma, and then we've got this other camp of glaucoma surgeons. And again, view from the street, I'm finding fewer and fewer physicians available in the marketplace who are just straight up focused on glaucoma. We're seeing more and more of the glaucoma doctors wanting to come to work in practices, and they want a significant volume of cataract surgery. So now we're seeing, even in our own practice, our fellowship trained glaucoma surgeons are not only treating glaucoma, they're doing lots of cataracts, they're doing advanced technology vision, and they're bringing MIGS in. So I think that line's getting blurred more and more.
I couldn't agree more. And you mentioned about the opportunities with moving forward. Dry eye is a multi-billion-dollar area of interest for all of us. You've heard some great talks here today already. The best treatment for dry eye today in a patient with glaucoma is a MIGS device. There's nothing that even comes close. Getting patients off glaucoma medications is a resolution for their symptoms in about 30 to 40% of patients who right now are taking glaucoma drops. Let me go back to you for a second, Rick. Right now, Medicare approves one MIG procedure per eye with cataract surgery. What is your view of the future? Are we going to be adding two of the same technology? Are we going to be adding suprachoroidal and trabecular bypass? Are we going to be adding Zen procedures as well? What's the mix going to be going forward? Is it going to be one or more procedures at the same time, or will they be sequential?
The original challenges of trying to get reimbursement was a big issue. Glaukos did a good job of getting a reimbursement piece for a single stent. That isn't to say that there aren't areas around the country where multiple stents are being placed, the surgeon may not get reimbursed, but the facility gets reimbursed. So adding a second stent for a patient who needs a little lower pressure can be done right now. In terms of the other newer procedures, there are already, in many cases, existing reimbursement codes in which the new MIGS procedures will be able to fit in. So I don't think they'll have the challenges that some of the other technologies we've had in terms of getting reimbursement.
Kerry.
Along those lines, Rick, if somebody has 1 or 2 stents and still not well controlled, can you put a suprachoroidal device or a Zen device in that patient and be effective?
Yeah, so certainly, in glaucoma, we're always preparing or anticipating that the initial procedure is going to fail, because most of them do, and so we always have a plan B that's going to give us some other alternative. Now, whether the suprachoroidal device or a Zen procedure will work, it should work. We don't know that because it's never really been done in that setting, but the subconjunctival Zen procedure is no different in mechanism than trabeculectomy, which we do all the time in failed procedures. So I think these will add as complementary procedures. The question is, where's the biggest bang for the buck in the beginning?
You saw the Zen procedure. I could very well see this replacing trabeculectomy completely, essentially. I don't see any reason to do a trabeculectomy any longer. Do you agree with that?
It has incredible promise, much better control. The big concern among all surgeons, particularly glaucoma surgeons, is complication rate. And as you saw in the original video of the trabeculectomy, there's so many steps involved and so many potential for complications. The subconjunctival Zen procedure really eliminates so many of those potential complicating steps.
Kerry, will cataract surgeons embrace a Zen procedure?
You know, that's a good question. You know, cataract surgeons, I would say on average, do not do trabeculectomies. Would you agree with that, Rick?
I would agree, yeah.
And I think the main reason is morbidity, hypotony, complications associated with blebs, et cetera. Time, that's right. From what I've seen from the Zen procedure, it looks like it's well within the comprehensive cataract surgeon's armamentarium. From my understanding, hypotony is not as much of an issue, and the blebs have a very low complication rate, so I would say yes, it would be.
Great.
And I think that the key here is that these new technologies have taken into account some of what the issues were with complications. As you talk about the Zen, controlling outflow with a smaller diameter device eliminates hypotony, and that's one of the big issues. So we can't discount what new technology is doing to this field.
Well, that's a great closing comment, and with that, let's end this panel discussion. I want to thank my panelists for their excellent comments, and we all appreciate being here today.